Patrick Daly still here? That man came all the way from Kansas today.
Are there any special features on this Red Sun thing? Like any other cartoons or anything, maybe? Like something that maybe Roger Craig Smith might have?
You.
They stole your thunder? Sorry.
No, but I don't have the press release with me, so I can't say it right off the bat. But if you go to your favorite local website, your favorite fan site, you'll see everything that is involved in this film. All the good. What are you talking about?
The Phantom Stranger short?
Very good point. We have a short called The Phantom Stranger. You guys are brutally aware of this, correct? The Phantom Stranger with Peter Serafinowicz as the Phantom Stranger himself and Michael Rosenbaum as Seth, the bad guy. I thought you meant all the others.
Oh, there's some other good groupies.
There's some really good stuff.
There's free memberships in the American Communist Society.
So this story was fascinating when it was published, and it's kind of timely today. Did you do any tweaking to the story to continue the relevance?
Not really. I mean, it's, it's weirdly, I think Jason and I were talking about this backstage, it's not, strangely, it's not that political a story. I mean, it is, but it's not, I don't think there's anything really kind of super pertinent to what's going on here, and if there had been something in the comic that did kind of, line up with what's going on right now in the world, maybe we would have leaned into it, but we didn't want to add anything to that. So, I mean, I certainly know how I'm going to vote in November, and if I thought that it would move the needle any way towards that direction, maybe I would have done that.
My mind is a whirl with the possibilities. What made James DeMatteis the right guy to write this story? You worked with him enough?
Yeah, he's a terrific guy. We worked with him for many, many years. I mean, he wrote a lot of some of our best stuff on Justice League and Justice League Unlimited, and specifically on adapting like tricky stories. Like he's the guy who adapted For the Man Who Was Everything for us, based on the famous Alan Moore story. So we thought he would be just the guy for this.
Two Elseworlds. I had a list when I was a kid. 2 Elseworlds stories in 2 years. Gotham by Gaslight, now Red Sun. What are the intricacies of bringing an Elseworlds story to animation? Thank you, Sam Liu. And you got any favorites you'd like to see made someday?
The 2 Elseworlds books that jump out at me for like just being really crazy and weird that I would like to do. There's a Superman one called Speeding Bullets, which is kind of like a 40s noir crime version of Superman. And then there's a really strange Batman one called the Doom That Came to Gotham that Mike Mignola wrote. So I would love to take a crack at that one. How about you, Sam? Anything?
It's funny because the Doom That Came to Gotham, I actually asked Mike Farland for the graphic novel because I'm really into that sort of Cthulhu type. I love that stuff.
Sam, tell us your life story.
Well, I was born. Nobody wants to know.
For those of you on the panel who were familiar with the story before you got the role, what were your... Is there anyone who was familiar with the story before you got the role?
This is the geekiest room I've ever been in my life, and I'm in Star Wars and Harry Potter. This is, and Star Trek. I mean, I am so out geeked. Does anybody know?
Yeah, my son is a comic book fan, and so he's the one who turned me onto this story many years ago, saying that it was super cool. He basically just told me the story, though, and I never read it, and I never read the script either, so this to me was a big surprise, and it was a really great story. I love the feminist bit to it, too. I thought it was very cool.
Well, that kind of leads into my second half of that question is, each of you is taking on an iconic role, but it is an Elseworlds tale. It's not the Batman we know. It's not the Wonder Woman we come to expect all the time. Were you thrown a little when you first read the script? Did it change the way you wanted to approach the character? Diedrich wants Amy to answer. Roger's up.
You were handing that to Amy? Go ahead.
Well, I've played Wonder Woman
two other times as far as the DC films go. Of course, Justice League, Crisis on Tourist, and then Flashpoint Paradox. And Crisis on Tourist, she was sort of what one would expect, pretty phenomenally. And then Flashpoint Paradox, she was obviously the opposite of what one might expect. Ask Aquaman. And then in this one, it makes so much sense that she says half the things that she said, but she's never really been given the mic, as it were, to sort of give voice to, telling a man to figure it out, etc. So I thought that was really interesting, and it was very well directed by Wes Gleason. Thank you, Wes. That moment was just sort of, it came and went, and it was immaterial to a certain extent, and I did not expect to see that on the script, but it was fun to bring it to life.
Women, am I right?
Diedrich and Jason, you two are traditionally cast as a villain and a good guy or a geek. You don't get the opposite roles, and in this case, you got sort of the opposite roles. What was that like for you, and how hard is it to work against the typecasting you two usually get?
It was interesting for me to be cast in this. I was extremely grateful, and every part has a different challenge. This one, he's kind of the bad guy, but he ultimately ends up being the good guy. It's so morally complex. For the medium, which has always been underestimated, it is an incredibly complicated story. And there's no clear, good guy or bad guy in it. And I thought that was super. I thought it was really cool the way that was handled. There's no black and white, and there so often is in this world. And but in this alternate universe, which is closer to our own, oddly enough, there's only gray, and there's moral choices that you make along the way. And I thought that was extremely well handled.
Yeah. The really corny answer is that when on screen, no, I want to look at you, Gary. I'm sorry, I don't look at them. I'm looking at you. On screen, most of those parts that are thought of as bad guys, the only decent ones are the ones that are three-dimensional and complex, because you only really hate them or are scared of them if you recognise them as human beings. And so they're, the most high-profile one being Harry Potter. He's a racist, and he's trying to make Hogwarts great again, and he's scared of he's scared of the present, because he looks back to a time when people like him rule the world, and they don't anymore. He'd like to turn the clock back, but he's a coward. He's a bullying coward, and he seems like a human being to me. And this, I don't know that. As Steve said, I don't think any of them. But what's great about it, I don't know if it's grey, because grey sounds muddy to me, but I think what it is there are no perfect solutions. So it's funny. One of the members of people who interviewed us outside asked me what it's like to play Superman as a bad guy. But he lands in Russia, and he's the same Superman we've always known. He's a guy who is absolutely obsessed with, or concerned with, dedicated to fairness and justice and truth. He sees it through the prism of the world he's growing up in and he's exposed to, which is a system designed to try and be completely fair. Just the system doesn't quite work. And there are things that are kept from him until they're brought in front of his face. And I would say that's probably similar to every system. And so what I love about this, I slightly disagree about, it's interesting we had the conversation, but I took something entirely different about it. It's not political with the giant P, I think it's incredibly political with a small p. Because at this time in this country, in my country too, people have dug themselves into positions, entrenched themselves into positions, and even in the face of evidence that should make them go, wait a second, how can I be saying absolutely adamant and sure that I'm right, because that's true, and this isn't happening. But it's too late, because they've kind of built this wall around themselves and defined themselves. And that's what I love about this story. I don't make it sound like a message. You've just seen it, it's a great piece of entertainment. But it's, you've got a presidential election coming up here, and I don't know what anyone else thinks, but it seems to me there are no perfect people to be in the White House. The person who's there at the moment, I would say, maybe slightly less than perfect, and maybe none of the candidates who are looking to replace him are perfect. But here we have Superman, who is in many ways the perfect human being, the most ethical, moral superhero who's ever been dreamt up. And even he, given absolute power, doesn't have a fucking clue what to do. He's not sure. He's not sure which way is the right way to run the world, and any decision you make has some dire consequences. And that's one of the things I loved about this script. I thought it reflected back exactly the world we live in, where there are no perfect solutions, but you better find the best imperfect solution and try and do it with some compassion. I have no idea what the question was.
Well, you answered it perfectly. Amy, there have been a great number of...
Thanks for that very mild ripple of applause.
There have been a number of very well recognized performances of Lois Lane, both on live action and in animation. Did any of that influence you, or how did you choose to approach this Lois Lane?
Yeah, I mean, I think growing up as like a child of the 80s, I had a very specific Lois Lane in mind of who Lois Lane is, and I was saying even before I wanted to be an actor, I wanted to be Lois Lane. Like, she was who you wanted to be when you grew up. So I was really excited to get to play the part, and then I read the script and I was very confused because I was like, no, wait, why is she with Lex Luthor? This is wrong. And but so as I continued reading and realized maybe he's not the bad guy, maybe she is still some of the same person. She still holds these beliefs. She still asks the hard questions and wants good answers and fights for what she thinks is right. And so I again forgot the question. But yes. But
What was your
The
influence?
question was, why hasn't Lex Luthor come up with some way to stop balding? Given his attitude?
Wigs, for example.
Several of you had particularly physical performances, Travis most notably. Are you just an absolute wreck in the booth at that point? I mean, what's going on there? Are you beating up the microphone and yourself?
Yeah, lots of sweat. Lots of sweat drenching through the shirt and the underarms, change of clothes, and then Wes just, of course, asks you to do it naked, which gives you the most real performance. It's all about, removing the layers. Is that not what you guys do?
Only in the audition.
No, it's great. It's great fun, especially in the ADR sessions where the animations come back and you get to chase picture. It just lifts the performance that much more. You get to see them just absolutely hammering away at each other, and so you're inspired to just give it all you got.
You save most of that for the ADR then?
I mean, you do a little bit beforehand, but it's also just whatever you come up with in your mind, whatever is there in the script. But what actually comes back when they've animated it is just so much more, and it's nice to match that picture and drive it home. Seeing Superior Man all bizarroed out, if you will, and having arms one size larger than the other, that kind of changes the vocal performance as well. So it lends to it.
Hand a microphone down to Roger and Sasha there. Oh, good. Roger, for starters with you. You voiced Batman in a couple of interesting incarnations. How did this experience differ for you?
This is easily the most unique. I mean, obviously with the accent, but this was my exposure to the Elseworld world, and very quickly I was like, this whole 10 seconds thing, those people didn't leave that building, did they? That's not a Batman I'm familiar with. It was like, yeah, sorry. So, I mean, I've answered a couple questions when we were doing the press for this about the similarities between the character that I've already played in the past and this one, and I still think this is what this film does so great, is the perspective shift of things, where you can understand that it's like, this is still a version of Batman that we know, in terms of he feels that what he's doing is correct and right, which arguably almost all the characters do. And he's got similar motivations to things that have kind of motivated him to do what he's done in other iterations of Batman that we're familiar with. And so in one way, I mean, other than the weird breaking of his policy, it's still kind of a similar Batman to what we know, just with a desperate attempt at a Russian accent.
We'll start at Sasha's end, and you can pick your own, but did you have a favorite scene yet in the film?
Favorite
that's-
scene in the film?
Favorite scene in the film, it's something that appealed to you most.
I mean, I'm blanking, of course, right now, because, of course, when you would ask me a question, nothing would come to mind. However, I did love the film. I just want to talk about the film as a whole because it's kind of funny. I think I'm the only one who actually speaks Russian on this panel. Coincidentally, that was my heritage. I mean, my father was born. That title credit, like 1946 Soviet Union. My father was born in 1946 in the Soviet Union. So that was a very interesting moment right at the outset of the film. But no, the whole thing for me just kind of spoke on several levels. Obviously professionally and just as a fan of genre and stuff, but personally because I was raised kind of in the shadow of all of this. My parents fled that part of the world and subsequently taught me sort of some of the horrors of it and. But again, watching it, it's a perspective, right? It depends who's telling the history, who's telling the story. That'll obviously always dictate who the hero is, and that really resonated with me on many, many levels. So I just turned the question to something I really wanted to answer.
Have a way.
That's how you do it.
That's PR 101, I like it. Anybody else have a favorite scene, or should we let the fans abuse you?
I will say my absolute favorite scene is when Superior Man calls out Superman and yells, "Superman!" Like, it was flawless. I love that moment. That was badass.
I have to say, I thought this whole thing was exceptionally well directed animation. And one of the things that I really love and miss in a lot of American animation, but they use it in, let's say, Princess Mononoke, for example, are moments of silence. I really did not expect that. The moment with the Chinese ambassador, for example, when they're just looking at each other, and he asks him a direct question, and he takes his time. And it's really beautiful because it makes you think. And so often animation just comes at you over and over and over again. That said, the action sequences were amazing, but the pauses, I thought, were just fabulous because it did reinforce this idea of which way are you going to go. There's choices that you have to make in your life. And when Superman and Wonder Woman were speaking, the quiet just really spoke to me. It was, I thought, beautifully directed in that way. So that's all I want to say.
I think my favorite scene, if that's the question, I liked when Wonder Woman came down and split everybody up and laid it all out. It was really badass.
I should say before, you said that I liked, akin to the pauses and the silence, giving it the space, like the fact that a lot of scenes don't end on a kind of button end line they cut to. They end, like moments do, with a bit of contemplation or someone having to go in and think about something. And people don't have the kind of great snappy comeback because they're slightly thrown by what's just been said to them. And it's just rare just to find sophisticated adult storytelling that's also entertaining on this in this world. That's why it's so refreshing.
Well, I love the music all the way through, and well done, bravo. You're a genius. That was amazing. Because having read the comic book, that's sort of one version. Then having read the script by myself, that's another version. Then to have interacted and then to see it with sound altogether. So I would say that is sort of my favorite overall thing. But the very moment that took my breath away was when Superman is saving the world. And there's that callback to Svetlana's line, and then the light flash, and then silence. I thought that was an elegant use of silence in contrast to the music right there. It really punctuated that sacrifice.
So the music was great, but best of all when it was switched off.
There you go, Freddie.
It made the silence more powerful, and the absence of sound, there was room for emotion in there. Much like you said that the beats of silence were full of emotion as well.
A scene that stuck out to me was when Superman pulled Svetlana and the other people out of the mines or wherever they were, and he knelt in in front of the sunset, I almost inferred that he could hear her heartbeat slowing down. I don't know, maybe that just was my interpretation of it, and he just knew that like there wasn't anywhere to go, just take this moment, give her this sunset, and he just listened to her go quietly. And the way that they animated his expression just really touched me. It was, you really saw the hurt there, and I don't think I've seen that on Superman in that way before, so that really impacted me in a way that sort of surprised me. That's any scene that Roger is in is also my favorite.
Can I change my answer to the silence? Good stuff.
Obviously, I'm biased because you know work so closely with all of these. I'm going to change my thing to my answer to giving all the voice actors praise actually because
Stole my answer.
That's once.
I don't know. There's just so much to this because the source material itself is so juicy, but there's so many I feel like moments